The Retirement Cafe Podcast, episode 77, Staying Healthy Through Your Retirement Years.
Retired or thinking about retirement? You've come to the right place. Welcome to the Retirement Cafe Podcast. In each episode, we bring you an important conversation with insight, tips and knowledge, all designed to help you live a fulfilling and successful life in retirement. Here's your host, Chartered Financial Planner and accredited later life advisor, Justin King.
Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of the Retirement Cafe Podcast, which is brought to you by the Timeline app. Timeline is the state-of-the-art retirement income planning software that helps financial planners like me bring your retirement journey to life and answer your big retirement income questions. I've chatted with a number of guests over the past 18 months about aging well, and it's a topic that I know many of our listeners are very much interested in. This week's interview is with someone who's got a profound interest in ways via which we can improve our health and quality of life as we age. Dr. Jitka Vseteckova is a senior lecturer in the School of Health, Wellbeing and Social Care at the Open University. She's involved in a plethora of research projects and training courses, all focused on helping people stay healthy far into their retirement years. Against the backdrop of COVID-19 pandemic, I thought it'd be interesting to understand what steps older adults can take to stay fit and healthy and well in these challenging times. So here's my interview with Dr. Vseteckova. Welcome to the podcast, Jitka.
Thank you, Justin. Hello, how are you?
All right, thank you. All right. I understand that you're in self-isolation at the moment because of the virus pandemic, etc. How's that going for you?
Do you want an honest response? I am getting bad. I am a person with high energy. My son is a person with very high energy. So we've been self-isolating for about 3 weeks now.
Wow.
So I have a very strong routine that helps me exercise every day, several times. So I'm certainly going to be very fit when all this ends. Not that I weren't before.
Oh, sure. So, Jitka, tell me a bit about. I mean, this is all great because, of course, I think all your knowledge and your previous expertise of, that we're going to talk about this morning, you're probably applying this to your own life as well. So, tell our audience and myself a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Okay, thank you. So I was born in Czech Republic in Prague. My mother is Swiss. My grandmother was Swiss. My father is Czech. And I'm mentioning this because it has kind of a link to who I am today, because I've been always learning languages in my life. And my first teaching experiences were also through helping other people to learn languages. So French being one of my mother languages, together with Czech. I've then learned several other languages as I went through the school. Well, of course, Russian, because we were back then under totalitarian regime. But after the Velvet Revolution, we were able to learn other languages too. So I've learned quite a few, and whatever people struggled, I was just giving them a hand naturally. So this is how the teacher naturally came about. And because I was always a high energy child and I stayed like that into adulthood, I always exercised. My mother made sure I exercised every day regularly, no exceptions. Mm-hmm. And so it's exercise, teaching first languages, but then teaching exercise as well. There's probably not really much of physical activities that I haven't done in my life. So, So I was then, whenever I grasped something, I was helping others to get on with it as well. So I think this kind of is who I am, and how and why this series of talks came naturally. Because when I went to university, I still exercised. I was still teaching languages while doing my masters, but the masters were already focusing on sports therapy. Right. And then I became very interested in doing a PhD and studying balance and postural stability. So, and we had an excellent teacher in physiotherapy who was truly inspiring, amazing person. And so the the interest about sports therapy and postural stability and understanding how important it is, it just came about naturally. So then I started looking into postural stability while aging, why it decreases, why it declines, what's happening, and how we can prevent this. So this is actually the research I've been doing for my PhD was around biomedical and psychosocial aspects of aging and how these relate to falls in older age. So,
right. Okay. So, you're involved in something called the Aging Well Initiative. Tell me a bit more about that.
So this is something that came very naturally because I was already involved in teaching by then during the sports therapy, having groups of people that I worked with to actually make sure that they do sports in the best way possible, so that it's rather healing more than actually getting injured, etc., preventing injuries. And I was invited to give a talk and to give a short course for all the people when I started my PhD. By then I had quite an experience already and was working with people and older people as well. And I just went, and from this time, which was probably 15, maybe 16 years ago now, I was talking to people about how to exercise, how to make it best possible exercise, how to prevent injuries, how to prevent falls as well. And this is how, when then I studied more about the biomedical and psychosocial aspects of aging, this is what I started to add to the mixture. So it wasn't just to prevent injuries and falls through sports, but it was also giving the background information as per why this happens in the first place. So this is what I just naturally continued through my PhD studies. And then when I came to the UK about 10 years ago, I was still doing these talks, but as invited talks, and I kept going back to Czech Republic 2-3 times a year. And then 2 years ago, I actually met with a practice manager of a GP practice in Suffolk, and we were discussing was at one of the conference meetings, and they have invited me to actually start giving these talks for their patients in their catchment area. And that's how the Aging Well public talks actually started in Britain. And then last year I've realized that it is great to be doing that. However, it might be very helpful to actually have a base, and Open University being an amazing employer and very, very keen promoter of public engagement for all the academics that work with and for the OU.
Yeah.
This became a very natural base to have it actually at the Open University, and to be able to link with all the networks and use all the expertise that there is about streaming these talks so that they are publicly available also for people who cannot attend, and helping to or supporting to create links that through which these talks then can be disseminated and distributed. So by now I have been already in touch with Public Health Northamptonshire, and we're discussing currently how we can prepare these talks for Northamptonshire public. I've been in touch with several GP practices, with local CCGs and councils, and other groups, for example, people with learning disabilities or carers MK. So it is still quite local, but I think the talks are stemming. They're attracting attention, and I'm also working on short films, teasers about the 5 pillars of aging well, and also I'm currently working on an open learn course where I could group these talks by academic year, because each of the talks now will be slightly different. So in this year, 1920, I had these 6 talks around the 5 pillars of aging well. But for the next,
what are the 5 pillars?
Which are nutrition, hydration, physical activity, social and cognitive stimulation.
Right. Okay. And so, for our listeners who are not familiar with, these 5 pillars: nutrition, hydration, physical, social, and cognitive stimulation. I mean, these are all things that especially with this lockdown scenario we've currently got, especially for the elderly community, seem to be absolutely vital. What are the practical steps that you think that people should be trying to incorporate into this new world that we're currently living in?
Yeah, these are actually all what we should be doing is and should be around the 5 pillars: the nutrition, hydration, physical activity, social and cognitive stimulation. It is what will keep us well, even under lockdown, which is actually I've just recorded last Saturday. We filmed a short film about how to keep well while aging and under lockdown. Right. So watch this space. I will be sharing the link with you. I should have it today or tomorrow, so we can add it to the list of links. We need to be mindful about how we eat. It is very important to eat regularly. Sometimes we might be in a situation where there is a temporary shortage in stock in the local shops or markets. So we need to be a bit creative and inventive. So if we, for example, can not find pasta or rice, we might be able to find nuts. So we may need to hang on to nuts, because nuts are an excellent source of fat and proteins. And as we all know, we need carbohydrates, proteins, and fat to actually keep our diet varied and to keep having all elements there that are helping us to upkeep our health, physical health, our muscles, and our metabolism. And of course, that give all the necessary nutrients to all the organs, including the brain. So carbohydrates are important because they bring glucose to our organs, and brain needs a lot of glucose. It takes about 20% of glucose of the overall body glucose consumption. But we also need a lot of protein and fat. And sometimes, from what I've seen based on my experience and research, is that older people might not be doing so well with proteins, and they might be thinking, and many people are today thinking, oh, fat is bad for me. But I think that we need to remember that proportions or moderation and variability are the key words here. We need to have a bit from everything if we can, unless, of course, we have allergies or conditions that prevent us from having that. Nutrition, keeping ourselves well nourished is very important, but not overnourished, but not undernourished or malnourished. So we need to keep an eye on that, because, for example, if we lack proteins in our diet, we are naturally predetermined to start losing muscles. Our muscles atrophy as we grow older, and this is more perceived or more easily perceived after we hit 65 years of age. And if we don't eat proteins, our muscles don't really have where to take it from, because protein is the essential building block for our muscles. So having enough proteins and exercise is incredibly important.
So what would you suggest? So for someone listening to us who hopefully is going to be eating well, but we talk about this muscle wastage as people get older, and it causes frailty, doesn't it? And it causes problems. So how do you? What are the things that you could do, maybe at home, etc., to try and have some kind of exercise regime that slows this down?
Yeah, we need to be quite creative these days when self-isolating and under lockdown. Of course, we can still go out and go for a walk when keeping distance, when following the rules about social distancing. So wherever we can do this, I would strongly suggest we do. When we cannot go out for whatever other reasons, we may need to be a bit creative how we use our energy for the best. So we need to be perhaps making breaks from watching TV or reading books as often as we can. So in this way, every little counts. So it's all adding up. So we don't have to go out for a whole hour, but we can split it into several stages during the day. We can do chores for 20 minutes every day. We can go up and down the stairs if we have stairs, cleaning garage or lofts, or do a bit of gardening if that's possible. If it's not possible, we may need to download or watch something from YouTube, for example, a Tai Chi exercise or yoga or stretching, because stretching counts as physical activity as well. It stimulates muscles, so whatever stimulates our muscles is physical activity. So physical activity sometimes is perceived by people that, oh, I need to be running or I need to be going to the gym and swimming.
Yeah.
Well, if we can do all that, it's phenomenal. Let's keep doing this. But when we can't, and if we can't, being physically active means also doing the activities of daily living, walking wherever we can rather than taking cars and buses, not making it easy on ourselves, not taking lifts, not avoiding stairs. And we can keep quite physically active also when we are, for example, sitting or standing, because the way we keep our body, we can do few very easy posture exercises that when we push ourselves away from the ground and we try to balance that, it already keeps our muscle well toned, and it keeps well toned muscles that are on our legs, which are quite large group of muscles. So there is already an exercise output. So trying to keep our posture to defy the gravity and push away from the ground is already an exercise, and it keeps our muscles well toned. So let's do that.
Great.
As much as we can. One other thing I would add, of aging well, is that hydration is incredibly crucial.
Right.
Because most people that I've met in my life and that I know are currently dehydrated, and they all know how much I go around and say, hydrate, 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 you need liquids. Most of us, I think, are dehydrated. So our body needs about 1.5 liter of liquids, ideally clear water, to actually get done with all the metabolic processes that need to happen in our body. And this is supporting the metabolism, how we process food, how the food is treated of energy, how the energy is created, how we can use it then for physical exercise or anything else. Our brain needs the glucose. This glucose needs to be broken down through the metabolic processes so that the brain can use it, etc. So for all this, for the day, we need about 1.5 liters of clear liquids. Now, this is just the strict minimum we should all be having, but ideally we would be somewhere around 2 liters. So maybe 2.2, 2.3, some people around 2 liters. It then depend on how we are, how we work with the liquids, with water and everything. We can, of course, have a cup of coffee, a cup of tea. But if we have, for example, 4 cups of tea or 3 cups of coffee and 1 cup of tea in a day, we're not doing a great job in terms of hydration, because all these beverages might be prompting us to go to the toilet a bit more often. So they're slightly dehydrating, especially if we don't drink anything else. So it is then about the proportionality. So if we have 8 cups of water, let's say, to have around 2 liters every day, if 1 cup is tea, another cup is coffee, and we still have 6 cups of clear liquid, the proportion is much healthier. Right. So it is not to avoid drinks. If we have a glass of alcohol in that as well, it's fine. But for as long as we keep the proportionality much more strongly towards the clear liquids that we're actually having.
Yeah, good.
And hydration is incredibly important also because our livers and kidneys, our metabolism may speed up a little bit when we're well hydrated. So the metabolic processes slow down the metabolic rate as we age. But if we keep drinking, if we keep well hydrated, the metabolic processes, the metabolic rate doesn't slow down so much, which means that everything that needs to get processed, and this is sometimes medication as well, processed fast. So why I'm mentioning medication is that dehydration and medication are one of the two worst combinations that can be actually linked with aging or age-related conditions. And this works also under lockdown, because if we cannot get the usual levels of physical exercise, which may speed up the metabolic rate as well, together with hydration, the metabolism will be slowing down. If we don't drink, it will be even slower. Age-related processes make it even slower on top of everything else. So what we're then dealing with is a combination of things. It's definitely not going in our favor. And our kidneys and liver need to process whatever medication we take. So even if this is spuriously taken Nurofen or regularly taken some other types of medication, if we drink plenty, we make sure the medication leaves the body without too many side effects.
Right.
If we're dehydrated, this is then, well, where the liver and kidneys struggle. When they get overloaded, they slow down in function even more. And then what happens is that we may be taking another medication before the first medication we took has left the body. And this is then what makes us very prone to severe side effects and intoxication, higher toxicity in livers and kidneys, which slows them down even more. So then we enter a vicious circle that we just don't want to be in. So I probably put the nutrition as a first of the 5 pillars, but actually I think I would struggle if I have to say whether it's hydration or physical activity. I think it's definitely go hand in hand.
Now, of course, one of the big things that people are going to change, or is going to change for people at the moment, is social isolation. It's actually it's a core human given, isn't it, that we need connection with other people. How can the older population deal with this, do you think?
I think this was one of my huge worries when I've actually heard that people over 70 might be asked to self-isolate and be on lockdown to keep themselves safe. The first thing I thought was, oh my God, but then we will have huge problems later on, because people may not die because of COVID-19, but they may die because of exacerbated frailty-related reasons, where frailty actually it's a combination of syndromes. And social isolation is one of them, and it makes just things worse. You're absolutely right. And our worry already in the society, where we don't keep people under lockdown, or we don't tell them to self-isolation and loneliness are already huge problems, and they kill people. So we need to make sure we check out on our elderly neighbors, even if it's by phone, by texts, calling them, texting them, seeing how they are. And if I, for example, have a few lovely neighbors in the village, and when I go running, because I have to go every day to keep sane, I just wave and ask whether there is anything we can do. Of course, keeping the distance we need to keep, but keeping in touch. It is important we remind people to just pick up the phone and give us a call whenever they feel like it. People feel very reserved and very careful about not overburdening somebody else. But the message I'm trying to get out here is that please don't feel that way. Just give us a call, because we would love to hear what you're doing. And we would love to hear, even if you're struggling, tell us, because it's better if you get it out. And it's better if we know you're struggling, we can support you even more, and we can find ways to support older people. So, but I think many older people would not go out and self-isolate already before the self-isolation started. Many people would not be opening the doors or going to the talks, for example. Yeah. So I think there we need help of carers, family members, younger ones or older ones, anybody or neighbors, just chip in and come and say, let me show you this, let me show you that. I'm sure this is possible to do now in even under the social distancing rules. But when the social distancing rules are not there, we need to keep an eye on our elderly population that lives around us and give them all the reasons to believe that we are safe people to open their doors to. Yeah. Because if they open their door to us, we can go in and talk and share and discuss and stimulate them. When people are told to self-isolate and being kept under lockdown and go out as little as possible, when people live in a block of flats and they have balconies, they might be able to wave at each other and just share a few sentences even at a distance. When they can't, we need to be using whatever we have. So we need to be watching television. We need to be engaging with what's happening around us. Of course, not only the COVID-19, because that's just not anything new, unfortunately. But doing crosswords, reading, etc. But making regular breaks to walk, drink a glass of water, walk a bit more, do a bit more of chores in the household, or go in the garden, come back and read again. So it is probably, I think, these times that we're under rules of self-isolation and perhaps lockdown very soon. I think what might help is to create a routine, because as humans, we operate well with rhythm. So that's why routine has such beneficial impact on us in general. So having a routine and sticking with the routine is probably what might take us through in a better shape.
Yeah.
But these are very difficult times.
Yeah, very challenging. Very challenging. Now, one of the other key topics of your Aging Well kind of series is the aging brain. Now, when I talk to people, they often saying they're forgetful about this, or I'm getting old, and my brain's not what it used to be. Can you? I mean, is this true that the aging brain is a something that is wasting away like your other muscles?
It is exactly that, yes. And what is tricky about aging is that each one of us is aging in a very different way. Now, this is one point around the talks as well, that it's not only for old and other people, it's for people who are aging, and we're all aging since we're born. So the only difference is that it starts manifesting much more when we're over 60 or 65, because that's today's most currently used benchmark. Everything slows down. Everything slows down. Our metabolic function slows down, our brain function slows down, our other organs will be slowing down. There is some significant wear and tear that has accumulated over the years. What we can do to prevent a massive or very rapid slowing down in functions and problems associated with that is to keep whatever we don't want to lose. So exercise brain functions as well as we exercise muscles if we don't want to lose them, because otherwise it will go. And it's just designed to do so. So there's no way to stop aging. There is a way to prevent a steep aging curve. There is a chance to boost all the functions we want to keep, but it requires work. So as it requires exercise for muscles, it requires brain exercise for our brain. It is normal. It is that there is something called normal physiological aging, which is what most of us are going through, as opposed to the pathological aging, where there are, for example, some neurodegenerative conditions such as Alzheimer's or forms of dementia or other neurodegenerative conditions that impact on the way our neurons transmit the information that's necessary to end up in one or another place. These neurodegenerative conditions usually create a barrier or a difficulty. So the information, either the action doesn't get there or the response doesn't get back, which then creates further problems. But for the physiological, for the normal aging processes, we're slowing down. We're slowing down. The organism is tired. Usually the sleep doesn't improve with aging. So whenever we cannot sleep, we can perhaps rest ideally or enough. It doesn't help our brain functions either. So what we can do is to exercise them. Of course, we will be forgetting things every now and then. We will be forgetting where we left the keys. We're not going to be sure whether we left the stove on or whether we switched the oven off. We're not going to be sure what this person's name is, although we know the face, we remember the face. But this is all normal, and what I usually say during the talks is, for as long as we can remember that we forgot something, it's all fine.
Right.
I think the problem starts when we cannot remember what we forgot. This is when it may start actually having an impact on our life, and it may not keep us exactly safe. So it's when we have to go and see help.
Yeah. I was chatting to someone yesterday who's got an elderly parent at home, and they have a phone call or a video call each day, and they with their father, and they do the crossword together, which I thought was a lovely thing to do. So it creates a bit of community, it creates a bit of connection, and also you're doing something that they both enjoy.
Yeah, that's absolutely amazing. You know what? I saw a beautiful picture the other day on Facebook, showing dad sitting in his study, having a phone and chatting with his son over the phone, and his son is behind the window outside, sitting on the chair in the jacket because it's fairly cold outside. But they were having a chat face to face, but on phone because they just couldn't share the space. They were keeping the social distancing rules, but it was a beautiful thing to see, and I just think this is what we need to do.
Yeah. Now, I know that you're involved in a couple of things. So I spoke to William Bird from Intelligent Health in an earlier episode of the Retirement Cafe podcast, and he's got a whole thing about health walks and green gyms, etc. And I know you've got a Keep Me Walking initiative. Tell me a bit more about that.
So this came about as a project that was asked to lead on by the Parks Trust in Milton Keynes. They are setting 5 ways cafes, which were previously called dementia cafes, for people living in Milton Keynes with dementia in the community, and hopefully later as they progress with the events and they're able to reconvene, because it's been all put to hold right now. Also, there will be walks, and it will be also open to people from nearby care homes. And all this is to take care of the elderly population that might be living nearby in the near neighborhoods, and increase the usage of the Manor Park in Great Linford. And they have been given quite a substantial grant by Heritage Lottery, where one of these projects is actually to also improve the landscaping of the park, improve lighting, put more benches, put drinking fountains, improve the surfaces so that they're smooth, so that vulnerable groups of people, not only older people with dementia, but all vulnerable groups, can actually use the park as much as possible, and the park is safe for everybody to use. It's an amazing initiative, and people from the Parks Trust are amazing colleagues. So we've really found a very buzzing hub for ourselves, and we collaborate very keenly on how to evaluate these 5 ways cafes, from which walks for people with dementia and the family members and the pets and grandchildren and the carers are stemming from. And people are invited to come and take part in the walks or other activities. There's always a bit of a social event, a cafe where people can talk. This is hosted by volunteers in the St. Andrew Church, which is in the grounds of the Manor Park. And it's an amazing initiative, and we're just very lucky to have been invited to take part in that. And we work very well with our Parks Trust colleagues. And in this case, it's more we're taking their expertise as something to guide us, so that we can cherry pick some of the research methods that we might be able to use to evaluate these initiatives at their best. And also for people who would like to roll them over in different communities or in other parts of the UK or the world. So for this, we're actually interviewing the staff members who are organizing the walks, the volunteers, people in the care homes. We're also interviewing carers and family members that take care of people with dementia, because these people are incredibly important in how they take care of their carees, of people living with dementia. And they are also crucial to hear from what needs to work for them, so that these walks are as well attended as possible. We're also interviewing people with dementia wherever they have capacity. And it is all about, how did you like the walks? How do you like this event? What would you like to do a little bit more? Would you like perhaps to do a little bit less? What makes you coming back and take part, which is incredibly important. And this is one of the main reasons why we're actually evaluating, because there is currently a huge gap in research about studies that tell us about adherences, in other words, about continuous engagement of people living with dementia and their carers in these types of walks or exercise. we need to understand what makes them coming back, because if we understand what makes them coming back, we can set the walks or other groups activities in this way to boost maximum attendance and to boost also the fact that people will be repeatedly coming, that will be engaging continuously, because only with regular and continuous engagement there are all the sustained benefits to physical and mental well-being.
Great. So, well, thank you so much for joining me this morning, Jitka. Where can people kind of maybe watch some of the films that you've done for the Open University and some of the training you've done and all this type of work to find out more about, all that you've done here?
So all this is available in a repository on Ordo Collections that is available via Open University. So if people search for Aging Well public talks, our resources are first online, and they are very easy to find. And when people actually click on the link to Ordo Collections, it takes them directly to the Aging Well talk. And I put there all the talks we've had, all the recordings I have of the talks, all the other additional materials. And so the short films we have just filmed around keeping well while aging and under lockdown and self-isolation, people will be able to find these there as well. And of course, I'll be sharing all the links with you, so perhaps it can be added to the podcast website.
Yeah, absolutely. We will put all those links on the podcast website. So, well, thank you so much for joining me. Is there any one message that you want to leave our listeners with today?
There would be probably two messages. So one of them is that when I was talking about the Aging Well talks, I haven't mentioned that actually I didn't say specifically that these came about as creating bridges, because there is a wealth of information for researchers around aging. There is incredible research going on, but people who may benefit most from this research are usually not able to get to this information because either they're not very techy, or it is quite difficult to actually tell what information is valid and reliable and pertinent for ourselves, for us individually. So this is actually one of the reasons where the person who loves doing sports and learns about aging loves to share, which is why I felt that this is a natural thing for me to do, to actually create bridges between the research community and the community that may benefit from the findings most. Another thing I would like to say is that I have encountered a myth around exercising and people who exercise. This is perhaps not so much pertinent for the times of the COVID-19 pandemic that we're living through right now. But once this is over and we can go out again and exercise as much as we want to, or walk as much as we want to, wherever we want to, one thing perhaps to keep in mind is that people often tell me, well, you people who exercise all your life, it's just you're just so keen to exercise that nothing can stop you. I just would like to say that it's not true. We may think so when we, for example, see the cyclists on the roads and it's raining and it's very cold, and most people would be thinking, oh my God, why are you not somewhere warm and cozy? And we see them with a smile and we're thinking, yeah, well, these are just strange people. So it becomes them and us. But there is nothing such. This is quite an artificial category. I have been exercising all my life, and I've done some sports on elite level as well as competing nationally and internationally. And I can say that all of us are the same. We want to take the easy route and we want to go on the couch. And whenever we have a half an hour or 40 minutes or an hour where we can exercise, it takes quite a substantial kicking to get ourselves out of the door, because you just look at the couch and you're thinking, oh my God, I just could do with 40 minutes lying on the couch and nothing else. But the only difference is that we know how beneficial it is when we kick ourselves out. So something I do, for example, is that I tell myself, okay, I'll go for 10, 15 minutes. And if I don't like it, I'll come back. But I'll do go. I usually prolong the stay out, because once you're out, it's just so amazing to be out. You come back as a different person. All the problems we have become from that big, that small. it puts our lives, our problems, and everything we go through, our stresses into perspective. And exercising or walking outdoors is just one of the best things we can do. So if you can, or please just do a bit more of self-kicking, because you will come back as different people. We all of us who you think exercise because we're so keen to exercise, we're not. We just do it because we know how much better we will feel when we come home.
Great, wise advice, and from everyone from every age, I think would be to take that on. So once again, Jitka, thank you so much for joining me this morning on the Retirement Cafe podcast. It's been fantastic chatting to you, and we'll put all those links on the website, and so lots of people can find out all about the great work that you do. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Justin. Lovely meeting you and lovely talking to you. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Bye-bye.
I hope you found that conversation as interesting as I did. To find out more about everything we discussed, check out the show notes at theretirementcafe.co.uk, where you'll find all the useful links that we talked about. As always, if you've enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review on iTunes or your preferred podcast player, and share the podcast with as many people as you can. It really does make a difference. To be sure to never miss an episode, please hit subscribe on your preferred podcast player. Or visit our website at theretirementcafe.co.uk, where you can subscribe to get an email every Tuesday letting you know that week's guest and topic. Thanks again to the Timeline app for kindly sponsoring the podcast. And until next time, this is Justin King, helping you feel more informed in your retirement.
Thank you for listening to the Retirement Cafe podcast with Justin King. To find out more, you can find us online at theretirementcafe.co.uk.